our job is to continue to build the relationships with reporters so that our clients will be featured, and that is not replaceable by a robot.
Yeah.
Relationships are still the most critical part of PR, and understanding human relationships is critical to the success of PR. So we reaching out to reporters pretending that they're human if we're using AI robots to go and
Mhm.
pitch reporters for a story. We can't do that. We may be able to say, we've got this pitch. Can you siphon it down and give us 3 salient points? Fine. But we're doing the work and we're creating the relationship, and AI can't do that. Just can't.
By the end of this episode, you'll know how to keep your message authentic in the AI era, how to build reputational capital reporters actually trust, and what founders get wrong when they pitch. Welcome to the Enhanced AI Partners podcast, where we explore how leaders scale with people, process, and pragmatic AI. I'm Yohan Mejia. Today's theme is storytelling in the AI era and reputation as a currency. My guest today is Mary Shank Rockman, CEO of MSR Communications, a data-driven PR firm known for crisis communications, long client tenures, and launches for brands like Airbnb. Mary and the team have been recognized among top crisis firms in the Bay Area and bring a rare blend of strategy, relationships, and analytics. Mary, welcome. Great to have you
Thank
here.
you, Johan. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to share our expertise and talk with you about storytelling in this changing environment of AI.
We appreciate you hopping on. And Mary, before we begin with the first segment, could you please tell us more about some of the latest awards that MSR Communication has won around crisis communication firms and top PR agencies in the world?
Yeah, thank you so much for acknowledging that. We were just named top 10 global leader in the PR firm category by 50 pros, who identifies the top agencies for people searching for agencies across the globe. We were really delighted by this. We didn't apply for the award, so we were really excited when we were named. And we were also named by another organization that called us our top 10 crisis communications firm in the nation. So very excited about that. And that company is called Azure, and they also acknowledge the top agencies around the country. So very pleased. The team at MSR has worked really tirelessly for our clients for the last 26 years. And it's just wonderful when you open up your email in the morning and find that you've been named something that you didn't apply for. And it's a wonderful, wonderful testament to the great work that my team is doing.
Well, congratulations. And
Thank
like you
you.
mentioned, I bet your team and yourself are all ecstatic about these recognitions. So
Thank
congrats.
you. Yes, we are.
So let's start with your journey before we zoom into the tech shift. So you've led PR through multiple tech waves. What's the one through line from your early director roles to 26 years leading MSR?
And I think relationships are one of the most important parts of public relations. Obviously, they really transpire generations, if you will, and certainly they transcend any type of monumental or evolutionary shift, especially in the tech space. When I started my career in public relations, I had a feeling that it was really a lot based on the relationships that you develop with the media and the analysts and any key influencer in the space. And I continue those relationships to this day. So I've had 35 years experience in public relations specifically, and many of the relationships I developed way back in the beginning of my career in PR actually have lasted this long. And many of those folks are editors in chief, or they've moved on to other areas of the marketing communications mix, but still people that I keep in touch with and have been incredibly instrumental in the growth of my firm and helping us understand how to storytell as the market has continued to change.
What did that first big crisis that you managed teach you about timing, messaging, stakeholder trust?
Sure. Yeah, that's a really great question. So, in my career, I had never really experienced a true crisis until I was heading up global communications for a multinational billion-dollar public company. And at the time, the company suffered from a massive embezzlement scandal. And we had really realized that this could be the make or break. We had so many shareholders. The company was so large, it was public. And we had to really focus on what's the meaning of this crisis? What does it mean to our shareholders? How will they understand the narrative? And for
Mm,
me, the most important thing was making sure that we addressed the crisis straight up front and we talked to those shareholders and we built trust with them to demonstrate that this was a isolated incident that became, public and also was one that we had not anticipated. So our strategy really was to tell the shareholders, we're sorry that this has happened. We were caught by surprise as well. There were some unacceptable transactions happening without the company's knowledge. And we will share with you exactly what we uncover in our investigation. And because of the fact that the CEO did go out with that message, was just as
mhm,
angry as the shareholders were, he was really trusted to tell the truth and to share the information that was most relevant for the audience. So we did address each of those audiences directly, whether they were customers or partners or investors, shareholders, of course, employees being really critical to the message. So, understanding how
mhm,
each of those audiences would receive the message, we were able to identify areas that made the most sense to share with those individuals. And in a typical crisis plan, you want to get ahead of the narrative. You want to tell people what they should know and what they should expect from the
mhm,
process of the investigation and when they can expect more information and what the next steps will be. And we followed that process very, very carefully. In fact, I had top tier reporter John Swartz, who has been at Bloomberg and at the time was at
mhm,
the San Francisco Chronicle, but then he went on to many other outlets and he followed me through the crisis, watched how my CEO and I had addressed everyone, what our conference call looked like when we did our earnings announcement that quarter. So he followed me through the entire process and as a result, shared that story publicly with what he could share publicly and what
mhm,
we could share publicly. So it ended up that we had really determined that the process of sharing that information settled the calmed people down, made them feel confident that we had our arms around it and we understood what was going to be necessary to communicate and to make them feel better. So that was really successful. We won a number of awards for that strategy. And who would have thought when I started my firm in
mhm.
1999 that a year and a half later we would have a similar situation, although this was a personal experience of
Mhm.
one of the CEOs that I was representing, and so that ended up turning out to be a very personal experience for many of the individuals who worked at the company. And so we came out with what we could. We were very straightforward. We had a trade show the following week with 36 reporters meeting the CEO at the time.
Oh, wow.
And we stood up and said, we understand there's been an issue. We want to talk to you about it if you have questions, but today we're here to talk about our product roadmap, and we'll be happy to
Mhm.
meet with you and explain to you further what we can share with you. And again, we won lots of awards for that. And look, what really came out with a very focused strategy that ended up helping again settle the nerves of the investors and the partners and the customers and those that were most critical to hearing the messages. And we were able to isolate the incident and effectively communicate that this was something that was a personal situation and didn't have anything to do with the operation of the company.
I mean, both of the examples that you talked about really defines the foundations of MSR's edge today. And if we could summarize it, from what I've heard is one, you're trying to build relationships, real, authentic relationships with each and everyone around. And then second, you are pretty straightforward with your messaging and you're not doing like a, one messaging for everyone.
Right.
You're doing unique messaging for each type of relationship that you have. And I mean, we've all been through a situation where
Yeah.
one of our accounts was hacked, whatever. And in my personal opinion, what I hate the most is getting a generic message where I don't know what will happen, why it happened, and what they're doing to fix it. But from
Yes.
what I'm hearing from your experience, this is something you do. You talk to
Yep.
each and everyone involved in the process, and you tell them directly what happened,
Yep.
what is being done to avoid it, and where you guys are at. And I think that's very unique, and it sets MSR apart. And I think that's why you guys have been successful during the past 26 years, and the rewards are just a backup. You know.
Yeah. Thank you. I agree. I mean, I think it really gets down to understanding everyone's human, right? And
Mm-hmm.
even in the business world, that can be extremely cutthroat. But incidents happen. Sometimes people are aware of them. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they can anticipate them. Sometimes they can't. And when these situations arise that are least expected, the most important thing to do is investigate what has happened and also look at how you can address each of the audiences and determine what's going to resonate with them most. What is their pain
100%.
point that you're trying to solve? And what are the questions, to your point, Johan, that can be answered, right? So
Mm-hmm.
some of those questions can't be answered until you've had a time to fully investigate the situation. We had another situation not too long ago 2 years ago, when Securities Commission of the Bahamas, one of our clients that we were planning a big conference around digital assets, was the jurisdiction in which FTX, which was Sam
No,
Bankman-Fried's
no.
big crypto
Mm-hmm.
organization, had lost $10 billion worth
Wow, that's
of
crazy.
investors' money, whether that was personal investor or institutional investor. Those individuals were devastated. The money was
100%.
gone.
Mm-hmm.
So, unfortunately, because they were headquartered in the Bahamas, that required us to take really swift action and to placate those that were all of a sudden blaming the Bahamas
Mm-hmm.
on whether or not they had proper digital assets frameworks and enabled this kind of activity. And of course, they have a framework in place. They, are one of the world's first frameworks to protect against this type of theft and digital
Mm-hmm.
theft. And so they were doing everything they could to help claw back the money that had been stolen or ostensibly had disappeared. And so we did have to think extremely strategically about how we communicated that message. And while they weren't the actual exchange itself, the company
Mm-hmm.
was headquartered there. So there was a lot of reputational management that had to take place, and we really had to be very clear about the communication. And we leveraged their new digital asset update. So their framework was having an update, and we were just about to bring it to legislation when this all
Mm-hmm.
happened. So that had to play into it and really address the fact that we were introducing this new legislation that had even more security protocols and even tighter restrictions. And that happened well before we even knew about what was going to transpire in their jurisdiction. So the communication around that was really critical. And we were able to share only part of the story, of course, because,
Mm-hmm.
many it was under investigation and there were things that nobody knew the answers to, but what we were able to share, we did, and we were straightforward with it. And we spoke to probably 110 different reporters during the first, 4 or 5 days of this happening,
Got a lot.
and got ahead of it. So had to
Mm-hmm.
really, some of which we got ahead of, some of which we did not, because there were all kinds of rumors swarming out there, and what the jurisdiction was responsible versus what they weren't responsible for, that was something in question. But we were able to really tell everybody, hey, listen, this is a bad actor. And in this situation, there's no way anybody could have known what was happening behind the scenes. So,
100%.
yeah, that was
Mm,
quite an interesting one. But we had a
no, it's a
lot of
crazy
really great
story.
strategies to help mitigate that. We introduced the new legislation. We secured a really prime keynote speech for the Prime Minister of the Bahamas at Consensus, which is the largest
Hmm.
digital show, and that was incredible. I helped write that speech that he gave, and he was able to address it right up front. And it was a similar strategy that we employed, which was tell them up front, we know this was a problem. We've worked on it, and we're introducing new legislation that will also help strengthen our position if there is to be this type of fraud in the future. So, and let's hope there won't be. But it was great that he was actually able to stand in front of all the key reporters, the business reporters,
Hmm.
the investment reporters, all of them, and tell them this and be truthful about it. So it helped again calm the audience. It helped people answer questions that they had, and, his attorney general was with him as well. So they were very straightforward with what they could say. And it seemed to tamp down
Calm everyone
the
down a
negative
little.
stress and tamp down the questioning around them, because really, ultimately, it was the bad actions of what was going on with the company,
Exactly.
not the government in which their headquarters was in the jurisdiction. So,
Yeah, I mean, I can't even wrap my head around dealing with that scenario.
great
And
experience.
can you recall a moment where or when the data said, let's take this angle, not that one, and it unlocked coverage for you guys?
Related to crises or just in general? Imagine in general.
Just in general.
Yeah. Yeah. We typically approach everything from a data related approach and leverage that data to develop our strategies. We like to
Hmm.
understand, number one, who the reporter is that would cover whatever it is that we're promoting,
Nice.
whether that's something that they would be interested in, what their coverage patterns are from the past. We look
Hmm.
at, what our clients bring to the table that would be unique and different as a result of the research. And we look at competitors, messaging from competitors, all different kinds of factors. And then we put our story angles together. And oftentimes what we'll do too is we'll identify some pain points that some of the reporters have talked about that they experience if it's a consumer product or a consumer solution, or if it's an enterprise solution, we then look at what's the pain point of the customer and how does our client actually address and solve those problems. Because in today's
Hmm.
world, the customer wants to know that you understand them best.
Yeah.
Right. That's why they've chosen you, is that you understand their pain points and you can help solve those pain points. It's the same thing with the reporters. They're looking for the technology that can best address the solutions of their readers, that the solutions are going to be meeting the needs that
Hmm.
their customers, aka their readers, are facing. So they want the story of the customer. They want to know that you're actually addressing those needs or any trends in the market, that you're actually addressing things that are most important to their readers. So that's the approach we take. And usually it revolves around identifying trends, identifying data that suggests there's something else going on or nothing at all. But these are consistent challenges that these customers face on a regular basis. So, yeah, I think data is really critical in today's world. And it's easier to have, it's easier to
Yeah,
find in
100%.
today's world with AI for sure. It saves a lot of time.
And that's actually the perfect bridge for the next segment of where does AI actually help your team today, and where do you draw the line, to keep the human voice intact?
Yep. Fantastic question, Johan. This is something I talk about a lot. I talk about with my team and colleagues and clients. Authenticity is critical in today's world. Now we have Sora that can make a video look like it's you skydiving, um, or you're rounding the bases at the Yankees game or something, when it's not you at all. So the authenticity has become critical. A lot of what we do now is we leverage AI in a way that enables us to save time. So when we're looking for the research, when we're looking for answers related to what it's going to take to get a story created, we will obviously do the research first, right? And once we
Hmm.
do, then we present ideas that have the data to stand behind them, right? And so the only way that that's possible is to authentically understand those customers' challenges or understand what the clients are doing that make them unique. And that's not something that AI can tell you, right? You need the
100%.
human intervention, you need the human authenticity to make sure that you are actually delivering something compelling and
Hmm.
truly human, right? Nobody wants to only deal with robots, and our messaging shouldn't be only delivered by robots. It needs
Hmm.
to be authentic. And yes, the challenge we find today is that the millions upon billions of conversations that are being had via AI are training the large language models to become more and more human like. And in fact, a year ago, I remember a client saying to me, "Oh, did you write this with AI?" And I said, "No, why?" And he said, "Well, the introduction sounds like AI." And I laughed and I said, "Well, AI is becoming more human-like. It's starting to
Yeah,
sound like humans." But the reality is, as it continues to become more and more human-like, that requires us to be more and more authentic. So it
authentic. Yeah.
requires us to pay closer attention. It requires us to differentiate. And that only can come from human intervention. And the same thing goes for enterprise technology with AI, right? You
Yeah.
can't turn over banking technology only to AI. You have to have
Hmm.
human oversight, or there could be mistakes made, and or some of those things that it's doing may or may not execute the way that they should be. So there
Yeah.
always needs to be a human involved. And in our world, if in fact we were turning everything over to AI, we would have no value. Our job is to
100%.
continue to build the relationships with reporters so that our clients will be featured. And that is not replaceable by a robot.
Yeah.
Relationships are still the most critical part of PR, and understanding human relationships is critical to the success of PR. So we reaching out to reporters pretending that they're human if we're using AI robots to go and
Hmm.
pitch reporters for a story. We can't do that. We may be able to say, "We've got this pitch. Can you siphon it down and give us three salient points?" Fine. But we're doing the work and we're creating the relationship, and AI can't do that. Just can't.
Yeah, I think you brought up a word that is slowly being lost, and authenticity is that word, and bringing it down and back again to being authentic with each of your relationships. And I think that's really valuable. Now, what are your internal AI guardrails for accuracy and tone that you use for you and your team?
So great question. So the guardrails are really critical. Because we're writing, doing the
Hmm.
original writing of everything that we do, the most important thing when we use AI to help us, whether distill the message and or create an outline or do the research, everyone in the firm is required to double check everything twice. We have to, because if we're relying on AI to do research and it gives us the wrong names of things or the wrong data, then what's the use of using it? So our
Hmm.
guardrail is everyone checks everybody else's work. And if we are citing something, I'm requiring the team to go to those reference points, double check to make sure that the data is accurate before ever citing it anywhere. So I can give lots of examples where I actually looked at using AI. I was testing a couple of things. One was I was testing it on its knowledge of the new term GEO, right? Which
Hmm.
is generative engine optimization, so generative AI. And I thought it was absolutely hilarious last week. I was kind of thinking of an example that I could bring to this conversation, that it was calling it geographic engineering optimization.
Oh, wow.
not what GEO is. And so I had to correct it and say that that's ridiculous. This is not, we're not talking about anything related to geography or engineering. We're talking about generative AI. And instead of SEO, it's GEO.
Gee,
And
mhm.
it said, oh, thank you. That's a great clarification point. And, kind of went on with this garbage, but it reminded everyone on the team, this is what we're dealing with, something that is not an expert necessarily in every topic. And I think one of the challenges that we're noticing is that everyone's relying on this technology to be the expert, and that they're taking it for face value. You can't do that.
Mhm.
So on our team, the most important thing is that double and triple checking every resource that this is recommending, so that we're not sharing inaccurate information. And I don't know if you've recently heard about, there was a lawyer that was fired by his firm, and rightfully so, due to the liability that he created when he used research from GPT to build out his case, and none of the information was accurate. Well,
Oh my god, that's
that's the chance
embarrassing.
that's the risk you take if you're using something and not checking every single source that it recommends. So if I'm
Mhm.
looking for something where I want statistics, I go and I ask it, and then I go to those sites that it sources. And most times it's pretty accurate. Sometimes it's not. And that's where you have to do your own searching, and you have to take the time, spend the time to go and look and see what's accurate and what's not. You just cannot take it for face value. So again, that gets back to human intervention, not only relying on AI. And while it's an incredible technology, it does have its pitfalls, and that would be one of the biggest, I'd say.
Yeah, and there was another case, I think it was involving the government and a big bank, where the big bank was showing exactly what it was. But basically they didn't check sources, and most of the sources that had GPT had added into the search were actually fake.
Right.
So they made up numbers, made up sources, and it
Yep.
was just not double checking for a piece of work that was a high investment from the
Right.
company. So I mean, double checking is just one
Yeah,
easy
it's again, it's
solution.
inserting that human back into the process. We can't take
Yeah,
away the human necessarily. We might be able to reduce the number of humans that it takes to
a
oversee,
100%.
but we can't take the human out of AI. We just can't, because it doesn't know everything. I mean, if you looked at an encyclopedia decades ago, when we used to go to the library and have to look things up, those encyclopedias were mined for data that actually existed and was factual, and we knew we could
Mhm.
rely on whatever we pulled out of those encyclopedias. If they were Encyclopedia Britannica, we knew it had a reputation, right, for trust, and it actually had integrity. This is totally different. This is not an encyclopedia that has been vetted enough at
Exactly.
this point to trust it by itself.
Yeah, maybe in the near future we'll be able to, trust it.
Yeah,
But
maybe.
for now, I
But
mean,
for now, it's still in the early days, and it's changing every day. So, that's that's going to be, it'll be a while. It's like the internet, as the internet developed.
100%.
Initially, you could just land on someone's site and it was like a brochure, and you took that for face value. Well, you were buying somebody's sales job, right? So, so now it's in a similar stage where we're in the beginning, and there'll be a lot more to evolve before we know we can fully trust it.
Now that we've spoken about the tooling, let's go and talk about the human side of things.
Mhm.
So, reporters say they want outcomes. How should founders translate product into proof?
That's such a great question, and I'm so happy you asked it. This is critical
Mm.
for the success of founders today, is to demonstrate not only the need for a product, but the examples that the customers give you, right? So if a
Mhm.
customer has a problem and you are solving that problem, that outcome data is critical to proving that it actually works, that it does what they say. We can pitch them all day long, doesn't matter. If we can't show the proof, then it's not interesting to anybody. And it's not interesting to someone that is looking at them saying, wow, maybe I do need that technology, but what does it do for me? Wait a minute, there's no outcome data? How am I supposed
Mhm.
to believe what it is that they're saying? So, yeah, reporters don't want to hear the marketing mix. They don't want to hear the marketing messages. They don't want to hear the PR pitch. They want to
Mhm.
see, what is this doing for customers? And if they
Mhm.
see a trend that looks like people have bought into because they're experiencing those results, all the more reason for them to say, well, show me the money, show me the proof, right? And that is what this world has turned into. It's no longer the 80s and the 90s where we could say, hey, we've got this new product, and we didn't have customers to prove it. We didn't have customers that showed the demand necessarily. We just showed these real cool, whiz bang, sparkly toys. That was great back then. But in today's world, where tech has gotten so incredibly competitive and there are so many solutions, no matter what the problem is, we have to be able to demonstrate the value of the outcome. What's the
100%.
stat? What's the outcome? And what has that done for the business? So we've used this technology. It's improved our productivity by X percent. Well, how? How are you doing that?
Mhm.
And what's the income been? And what has the outcome been on the company? Okay, well, that only took 3 people instead of 10. Or, oh, we're going to need an army of people to be able to do this to sufficiently address all of our customers' needs. So it's that data discovery. It's understanding what's
Mhm.
underneath the technology and the value that that's bringing to the business. Typically, it's about making sure that you are delivering something that truly helps the organization. You're not just creating a product and then looking for the problem. You're actually looking at the problem and
Mhm.
identifying the solution and delivering a solution that makes an impact on the business. So there's a big difference there. And a lot of times founders get so excited, and what we always call in PR, drink their own Kool-Aid. And they get so excited about what they've created, they forget that, well, maybe there's 500 other solutions that address that problem. Or, oh, maybe there are dozens of others that, have gone out of business as a result of creating a
Mhm.
problem, creating a product where there's no demand, right? So
Mhm.
it's really identifying what it is that you're trying to solve from a customer pain point perspective. And in some cases, it's also about, look, our partners need this in order to be successful. How can we help them there too? So it's not just about a great idea anymore. It can't be. It just can't be. You have to
And
have.
I think with today's tools, you can research if there's a problem to be solved,
That's right.
research if there's any competitors involved, how expensive would it be to develop
Yeah.
the product, etc. So there's no excuse for a founder not to do this homework, if you want
Right.
to look at it that way.
Right. It's absolutely right.
Now, when things go sideways, that reputation capital gets tested.
Yes.
And I think every leader, every CEO, every founder will face a moment when trust is their only currency. So you've set examples earlier during the call of going through issues to the FTX fallout with the Bahamas regulator. So without naming names, what's the first step leaders miss in that initial 24 hours of a crisis
Of a
management?
crisis. I think probably the one of the biggest challenges for anyone going through a crisis is acting quickly enough, right? So that can be a blessing and it can be a disaster. So
Mhm.
it's looking at the situation, having everyone around the table, understanding what the issue is. If you don't have enough information, do not go out there and say, we've done this, this, and this, or we think it's this without having all the details. So there is nothing wrong in a crisis perspective with saying, we don't know all the answers yet. We're aware of the problem. We are investigating the problem. And in 3 days or 2 days or tomorrow, we will have more details that we can share with you. That's the best way to handle it if you don't know what's happening. And
Mhm.
if you hide behind, the hope that it goes away, wrong answer, right? You cannot. hide behind it. And I cannot tell you how many companies I've actually seen hide behind the scenes that I've
Mhm.
said, well, wait a minute, there is nothing wrong with you preparing a statement and coming out with this because if you don't, someone else will rewrite the narrative. And it's happened
100%.
over and over again. Some people don't want to take the risk. I completely understand it. But when you've got people, when you have forums like you do today on Reddit, Telegram, Discord, TikTok, of course, all of the places where messages spread like wildfire, whether they're true or not, you don't have the luxury of not responding. So some are not worth it, right? Some situations are not. Maybe you've got, somebody that's complaining about a product quality or blah blah blah. Get in touch with that person, find out what the real issue is, really try and address that issue so that
Mhm.
it's kind of at the local level, if you will. But if you've got a much bigger problem on your hands that's spread virally across all platforms and everyone's starting to talk about it, they're creating your narrative. So you've got to get ahead of that and put a stake in the ground. We're investigating it. We will be back with you on X day and X time, and we'll provide you more information at that time and reinforce your value and your narratives and why customers are so important to you. So there's some real specific things you can do when you're dealing with crisis issues. And then for the ongoing narrative around
Mhm.
reputation management, which is really critical too, it doesn't just stop after you've kind of cut off the snake's head, it still continues. So you need to be able to strategize on what's the reputation management plan? How do we
Mhm.
gain back trust? How do we demonstrate to our customers, to our ecosystem, whether that's partners, investors, any constituents that are related? How do we demonstrate to them that we've taken this seriously and we are improving, we are changing, we have solved the problem? And that's all part of the strategy. It can't just be, oh, we're going to go out and tell everybody this is what happened and then we're done with it. No, doesn't work anymore. There's too much, there are too many platforms out there that allow negative discussion or allow for inaccurate information to spread like wildfire. You just can't take that chance. So the more you put out information that's accurate, that's positive, the more that people will begin to build back trust and begin to your constituents will begin to trust you again.
So prevention really comes down to policy plus practice and planning.
Planning. And every company should have a crisis PR plan in the background, just in case.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter if you think this will never happen to you. Doesn't matter at all. I can tell you, I have a client or had a client that is, one of the world's largest companies today. And, back in the day, they thought there's no way we would have a crisis. Our community's too strong. There's no
Mhm.
way they would, come out against us. Well, guess what? Yes, they did. A year and a half after we were working with them, the crisis plan that I wrote was probably coming front and center. And I had to, say to my team, look, guys, if only they'd listened at the time, they would not be in this mess. And that happens. People just believe that their customers and their community that they've built will always trust them. And it's not always the
Mhm.
case. All it takes is one bad apple and then it spreads. So that's really what it gets down to is being
Yeah, and
prepared.
you've mentioned really important facts like social media, forums, and how one bad review can become viral
Yes.
in days, which
Seconds.
is, I think it's yeah, seconds even, which I think is crazy because it can be a lie. But if there's nothing done, then everyone will buy that lie.
I mean, just look at our world condition today. I won't get into politics or other issues, but there have there's a lot of that going on right now.
Yeah.
And you see it because you see one clip of something and you form your opinion, and then you see 10 more clips of the same thing. All of a sudden, you're believing it, right? Doesn't matter if it's true or not. This is how the world operates today. It's unfortunate in a lot of ways. It can also be incredibly positive, right? So
Mhm.
there's a good and a bad, but it's straddling that balance and being prepared for any situation to arise and taking responsibility for it.
And now that we've hit or mentioned prevention, for a seed to Series B company, what should already be in place before a crisis hits?
Yeah.
Spoke people, dark pages, Q&A trees, crisis management plan.
Yep.
What do you think they
Yeah,
should
all of
already
the
have in
above.
place?
I mean, it's, really putting together a comprehensive plan, especially if your technology could potentially impact somebody really negatively. Like if you are providing
Mhm,
technology for banks, right? And one thing goes wrong and everyone's affected, all of your banking customers or all the constituents involved, the institutions, what have you. You potentially have a nightmare on your hands, right? And so to be able to anticipate and do research around those kinds of activities and plan in advance for what happens if, and have those
mhm,
scenarios, a playbook of scenarios, and be prepared to address those issues and quickly begin to resolve them. But again, it gets down to, if you've prepared well in advance, you're able to then let the experts who need to solve the problem get busy and do that while you're helping address the issue and letting people know we're working on it. We're investigating it.
mhm,
We're going to get back to you. We understand what's happened now. So here's what's happening next. Here's the next step. So it is a challenge. Like, we just saw a competitor of a client that is integrated into, the largest CRM system in the world, and their information was hacked and all that information was spread, and all the conversations that company had been storing, and they waited to respond. Not a good idea, because everybody else had the narrative and that narrative is still running wild. So it didn't matter that they responded, a couple days later. Didn't matter,
mhm.
right? Because the story was already shaped by people who didn't have all the details. So if they had just come out and said, "We are aware this has happened. We are very sorry. We are looking into it tomorrow, next day, next week, whatever. We will have more answers for you. Please bear with us." That might have been a different story. And you could apply that to nearly any situation that's gone awry.
100%. I was thinking about, relationship wise, with my wife, for example.
Yeah,
And it comes down to that, being upfront with something I think I did wrong or something I
right.
did wrong and trying to solve it, trying to be proactive in how to solve it and not hide it. Because if
Absolutely.
in any case, doesn't have to be a husband wife relationship, but in any relationship, if
Any
the
relationship.
counterpart finds out I lied, then trust is broken.
Listen, it
Simple as that.
always comes back around. And we've
Yeah.
seen that through history, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
I will tell you a funny story. It was funny, but not funny. So when I had this situation happen when I was head of global comms at Sybase, and the embezzlement scandal took place, at the same time, the Monica Lewinsky trial challenge was happening, or the news had broken, which I always say I'm grateful for, because it put our crisis on the back cover
On the
of the
side.
business section, not the front cover, which is where it should have been or would have been had it not happened. But it exploded at the same time. Well, look at what happened. If he'd just come out and said, "I had, inappropriate affairs with this individual," it would have gone away. It would have eventually gone away. But
Yeah.
now President Clinton will have that on his record forever. And it's a
Mhm.
shame, because he was a great president and he did a lot of
Yeah.
great things, right? But the fact that he wasn't 100% honest about that relationship is what continued the conversation for years, if not decades since.
Yeah, and if
That still goes
if you
down in
ask
history as
anyone,
one of those situations that was like, "Wait, why did you lie about this? Why
yeah,
didn't you
like,
tell the
and if
truth
you ask
about
anyone
it?"
about Bill Clinton, they will probably mention this and not
Exactly.
all the great things that he did, which is really
Absolutely.
unfortunate.
And that's a perfect example, right? So you could do everything right, and then you do something wrong, and you're judged by only that,
Yeah.
right? Because you weren't truthful, or you didn't come out and say, "Hey, I made a mistake," or "I might have made a mistake, and I just wanna prepare you." There it is.
Yeah, which is a
So
different
you can
story.
see that with
Yeah.
any situation. And when they're in the global spotlight, you don't have a choice. You have to be honest. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to tell every detail, because in many cases, when you're in the global spotlight, you don't have a choice. You can't tell every
Hmm.
detail, and nor should you, right? But it is really important to be able to say, yep, something went awry here. We're not going to hide that.
Now, let's arm founders with a fast PR checklist, and let's try to turn this into a playbook founders can
Absolutely.
use, this week. So, give us your 5-point PR sprint for a resource strap founder trying to ship in 90 days.
Trying to ship in 90 days. Wow. Um, don't rush to the finish line before you should, unless you're curing cancer or some massive disease, right? And I
Hmm.
tell my team this all the time, and I tell my clients this too. We're not curing cancer. What is the rush? Take a deep breath, slow down, and let's map everything out. And let's figure out what does make the most sense for an introduction to that product, right? And I'll have people call me and say, well, we need to get this out in 6 weeks. And I'll say, what's the hurry? Well, our investors are waiting for it. Okay. And what else? Our board. Oh, our board has to see us deliver. Well, I think your board and your investors will be happier if you don't make a mistake by going out too
100%.
soon, when you haven't tested everything, when you haven't tested the messages. So I can give you a great example of this, and really quickly, because I know we're strapped for time. But we did have a client that wanted everything out, really tight turnaround time, and we said, hold your horses. We need to do the research. We need the data to make sure that these messages will resonate with your customers. There's a lot of people in your space. It's very crowded. You have to take the time to do it. Oh, well, we want it next week. No, we're not going to be able to deliver it next week. We need to think about progress as it relates to, once the work is done, that allows us to see where you fit, how you differentiate. Then we can create the proper messages to communicate about your technology. And then we can prepare. I always say this, analysts should come first, well before press. And this would be my tip number 2. Slow down, meet with the analysts. Make sure the analysts can actually verify and validate what it is that you're doing. And many people don't even know that you can meet with analysts without paying them, but because they have a responsibility to cover a space, they need to
Hmm.
see all the technology that exists in that space. So for founders today, they should always be meeting with analysts first. Test your messages, test the technology with them, demo the tech so they understand what you're doing, see what they think, get their feedback. If you want more feedback, you'll end up obviously having to become a paid customer. But
Hmm.
initially, you can get some great feedback. Oh, I would think about this. We're talking to an enterprise that's looking for that, right? And that company would benefit if you also included X, right? So all
Hmm.
of that analytical feedback is critical. And sometimes we see too many technologies like this. You're not differentiated. You need to go back to the drawing board, right? So that's invaluable feedback. So that would be my second tip. After you've slowed down and done the research and taken a deep breath, you meet with the analyst, you get their feedback, you refine the messaging. That's third.
Hmm.
And I would say also, in the meantime, when you're meeting with your analysts, you're also meeting with customers. And you want to make sure those customers read the materials that you're putting together, understand the content, and give you feedback, whether positive or negative. We actually did this recently, and turned out that this client has technology for a variety of areas, and many of them resonated with everything we had created. One of them did not. She didn't see herself in the message because her area of specialty is entirely different than the others. So we said,
Hmm.
got to step back. We have to add her pain points into the mix. And we also have to adjust the messaging to address her needs. So progress comes from taking a deep breath, really mapping out a strategy that allows you to test the messages, to demo the product, to meet with the analysts, because they're the influencers here. And they do have an opportunity to influence a lot of enterprises that are considering technology. So that's really key. And then taking it to the media after that, after the fact, after it's been vetted, right? And then pitching the stories. And it's not just about products. So my
Mm-hmm.
fourth tip would be when you are pitching, you need to find that business problem that you are solving. You need to have the customer example. That customer is king when it comes to telling a story. So
Mm-hmm.
do not launch if you can't demonstrate at least one customer or one analyst that says our customers will find this valuable. Right. So there's that. And I'd say those would be the most important tips. And then also just making sure you've got a really solid team that are great communicators. The PR team can media train. We can create messaging for each individuals that highlight their strength. So
Mm-hmm.
leverage the PR team to help you deliver those messages in a way that goes broader beyond just your internal team where you're all drinking the Kool-Aid. We need to be able to
Mm-hmm.
go out with the message, test the
Mm-hmm.
message, and then test it again, right? And there's always one thing I always say to everybody, which is repeat, repeat, repeat the narrative. And if that narrative is falling flat and no one's responding, then you have to go back to the drawing board. And that's okay. There should always be a plan B, always a plan B. So when you're going out with something new, you need to have a variety of topics that address those concerns, right? The problems that you're trying to solve. And then the trend or the 3,000-foot umbrella message that
Mm-hmm.
addresses what else is out there and one of the
Mm-hmm.
reasons why you've developed the technology.
We appreciate that. And I think this is a playbook that not only founders, but everyone out there can
Agreed.
and will be using. And in your opinion, what's that first metric that tells you messaging is working or a story is working?
Yeah, I mean, I think the response, right? So, we were like what we did with that one customer who said,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see myself in this. We tested that on her. And once we did that and revamped everything, it's a different story now. She sees herself. The case study's there. She understands that they also include her in their messages. So that was incredibly valuable. Also, from the analyst perspective, some of the things that we saw there, those were things that the team had never even thought about. So we revamped the messaging to incorporate some of that because it is a differentiator. What they discovered was a differentiator. And the team had kind of thought of it as, oh, that's a given. Well, no, it clearly was not. Right. So being able to test those messages and then go back, then you need to figure out, all right, if we know these are key points that are important to people, how do we use them to differentiate ourselves? And then you take it from there. And again, it's content that you pump out that shows those messages. And if nobody's downloading that content and nobody's clicking on the LinkedIn post or the blog post, then you can pretty much tell if the reporters aren't responding, it's not differentiated enough or it's not interesting enough. So you always have to have a plan B. And then you just need to tweak it until you get the response you need. And sometimes it takes 3 or 4 times. Nothing's perfect. Everybody's different. So yeah, we're going through that right now with a client that, they had a couple of ideas of who they
Mm-hmm.
think they are, what problem they think they're solving, and then in the meantime found some other opportunities. So we're retweaking everything. And now we're starting to get media interest, right? Because in the beginning, we only got a few. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it really depends on the response, and that's what you have to pay very close attention to.
And I mean, throughout the conversation, you mentioned testing. So
Mhm.
continuous testing, making sure you find what works for you and your clients. I think that's one of the most valuable aspects that any founder can do. Just continuous testing on all
On
sites.
everyone. Yeah, on your investors, on your customers, on the analysts, on the press, internally. That's great, but you're all gonna be singing from the same hymnal. It's really the people that you're trying to address in your ecosystem. Does this work for you? Does this actually mean something? Does it resonate? So, yeah, continuous testing of the message.
So now, that's the perfect spot for the quick lightning round. So we'll go over
Okay.
4 questions
Yep.
and we'll wrap it after that. So, Let's start with the first one. What's the most overrated PR move in 2025?
Oh, wow. That is a fantastic question. The most overrated, I mean, everybody thinks they need a press release. And you don't always need a press release. Not everything
Mhm,
warrants a press release. And in today's world, with LinkedIn becoming the town square and reporters active on social media, that's sometimes a better bet. So, yeah,
that's awesome. Now, what's the most underrated proof asset founders ignore?
articles, right? So, what it has a double edged sword. So, a lot of founders will say, well, I can be guaranteed, and there is no such thing, I can
Mhm,
be guaranteed an article in such and such. So I'm just going to go with this other agency that's going to guarantee me coverage. No one can guarantee you coverage. No one. Not even, no one can, unless it's the
mhm,
editor or the journalist responsible for the article. Nobody can
mhm,
guarantee it. If you are being if you are being pitched that someone can guarantee you that coverage, they have an affiliate relationship or a paid relationship with that outlet. That's the only way.
mhm,
So from an underrated standpoint, people are looking for the quick hit, right? But the long hit is the one that actually has the value. So the article that's been earned, the proof that you've given, the customer story that you've given, and it comes
mhm,
out in an authentic way that a reporter has written about you, people have started to undervalue that, but they shouldn't. It is the most highly prized, and it still should be. There are times and places for sponsored posts and you know paid advertorials like that because, integrated marketing makes if you've got the budget, go for it. But if you're a startup and you are on limited budget, the most effective way that you can have value or show value is through earned media, is not a promise, right? That is not a
mhm.
paid post. That is something that is actually authentic. And I will also say one other thing is that with the paid affiliate programs that these people have, that outlet might post it for a week or two, but then the next cycle hits and that next
Mhm,
affiliate person will fill it with something else. So you've just paid X thousands of dollars to be in TechCrunch, and next week it's gone. So just remember that. That's, the most highly prized and undervalued is the actual authentic earned media.
I
And
appreciate you
it'll
sharing
continue
that.
that way, especially with AI. I think it's going to
Yeah,
continue even
it
more.
comes back to that authenticity that we've talked about. Now, what's one habit that builds reputation capital weekly?
I think it's engagement. So
Mhm,
again, it gets back to the relationship. And if you are active on LinkedIn or other social channels and you're following a reporter or you're following other business influencers and you're engaging with them, I think that's the most important current form of currency is that engagement, showing them, that you understand their challenges, that you understand their readers' challenges, and commenting and not
mhm,
being afraid to say, hey, this is a great article, or oh, hey, I disagree with this. Have you thought of this? So not being afraid to make yourself present. And I know it's difficult. Founders don't have time. I don't have time. We all don't have time, but we have to carve out a little bit of time every week to make sure we're engaging with people. Otherwise, why should they pay attention to you when your PR team reaches out to pitch them? We need to be
mhm.
engaging regularly.
And last question, what's one book or podcast you gift to founders or that you recommend?
Wow. This is going to sound funny, but
Mhm,
I listen to a podcast that I just absolutely adore. And it's a woman who owns a fashion store and
mhm,
she deals with all the major fashion designers in the world. And it's called What We Wore. And it's not necessarily about what we wore, it's about how those people have developed their businesses from baseline, where they got their
mhm,
ideas, how they built their businesses, what creativity was put into the mix. And at the very end of the podcast, she always asked them what they wore to their senior prom. And I
mhm,
find that so kind of kitschy and and sweet to hear some of these people talk about. But the reason that I love that podcast is because it's really creative. It doesn't have anything to do with tech that I deal with every day, right? Or even the consumer stuff that I deal with every day is not related to fashion. And it just has me think in a different way about building business, building rapport with customers, delivering a real quality product, and having the world see it and what that took. The blood, sweat, and tears. And boy, do I know that after running a business by myself for 26 years. It's blood, sweat, and tears. And sometimes our clients become famous and sometimes they don't, but they influence those individuals that they're trying to influence. And that's the most important thing. They don't need to be the biggest brand on the street, but they need to have the highest quality products. They need to be telling the right stories and really addressing the pain points of their customers and, be good people, fun people to work with. So it's, yeah. So I always find a lot of joy in listening to that one. And I've recommended it to a lot of people, especially business
And you
owners.
said it's called What
What we
You
wore,
Wore? What
what
We
we
Wore.
wore.
All right. Because
And,
I usually do some driving, so I'll try that
yeah,
out
she's
for my
great.
next.
And, if you have any interest in fashion, it's really fun to listen to. And her store is called National, and it was out of North Carolina initially, and
Mhm.
now they've got one in Marin Country Mart in
Oh.
Marin County, California, and also in Santa Monica Country Mart. So it's in Southern California too. But
And
yeah.
I do have some interest in fashion. My mom owns a clothing factory,
Oh,
and she's
wow.
worked in the fashion industry
Oh,
for
she'd love this
30
then.
plus years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so
great.
I'll recommend it. And because she's involved, I've been, casually involved in the business as well.
That's
So
terrific.
there is some relationship there.
I love that. Well, I have an identical twin, and she
Mhm.
is deeply involved in starting a little fashion business right now. So it's just a great. I don't know, I find it really fun to listen to, and again, it's different than what I do every day, but there's a lot of parallels, and makes me think really creatively sometimes.
Yeah, so I'll definitely share it with my mom
Yeah, please
during our
do.
Sunday cookouts. I'll
Yeah,
probably put it in the background.
yeah.
And now we'll wrap with the key takeaways and go through a summary and closing. So today we learned how to stay authentic with AI, in the loop, and how to bank reputation before you need it. Mary showed us why outcomes beat slogans and why relationships still move headlines today. So, Mary, where should listeners go first? Should they go to the MSR Communications website,
We
a
love it.
recent article, or connect with you via LinkedIn?
Yeah, they can connect with me. Thank you. Mary at msrcommunications.com. We have a website that is in the works right now. So
Mhm.
we're updating, but our old one is still existing. And we also have a very active presence on LinkedIn, and so do I. So it's LinkedIn/Mary Shank Rockman, and also MSR underscore communications, I believe. MSR Communications. So we're very, very active there, and probably a good place to see us and learn more about our voices, and then reach out to any one of us. We'd love to chat with any of your listeners.
Mary, thank you for joining. This was a masterclass, and we thank you for the insight and honesty. We'll link MSR Communications and Mary's resources in the show notes below. And if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, leave a quick review, and share it with a founder who needs a PR reset. I'm Yohan Mejia. This is the Enhance AI Partners podcast. See you next time.
Thank you so much, Johan. This has been my pleasure.